The first question is actually a question to Professor Hamilton. And it starts with a quote, which is, "Universities in China need 20 years to become world-class universities." This was apparently appearing in one of the newspapers. Professor Hamilton, what are your comments on that quote and suggestions for heads of universities in China as they contemplate this?
I like many things appearing in the newspapers, I'm not sure I actually said that, but what I did say was that in the opportunities I've had to visit Chinese universities, just on this trip I gave lectures in Shanghai Jiaotong, in Fudan. I've visited Beidar and Tsinghua on previous occasions, and I've met now with a number of university leading presidents in China, and have had the delight to get to know Tony Chan in Hong Kong and other Hong Kong university leaders. What I said was, it is clear to me that the leading universities in China are on a trajectory where they will be world-class universities, and I suspect that it will be within 10 to 20 years that we will see a number of Chinese universities in the top 20 in the world. And I think that the comments in many ways have been made during both of our introductory remarks, that there are certain things that characterize the very best universities in the world. Without question, one of them is a free and open inquiry. An opportunity for professors, and in many ways this is the absolute key, an opportunity for young professors to disagree and change the work and the thinking of older professors. It's absolutely part of the strength of the leading universities in the world that young professors bring through new ways of looking at the world that can often be in contrast to the views, the hypotheses, the theories of older professors. That has to be something in a healthy educational system. It is where great innovation and new ideas come from. It's something that I see already beginning in China. I think once that takes strong hold in the leading Chinese universities, then there will be no stopping them.
Thank you very much. The second question is for Professor Chan from the audience, and the question is, what is the role of science and technology in a world-class university?
Oh, thank you very much for that question. Well, you know, I already mentioned it a little bit. First of all, first and foremost, I should say, science and technology is part of human culture. It's not separate from human culture. Just like we educate students to read and write, we should educate students to know a little bit about science and technology. Just imagine the world around you. You know, in order to make decisions, in order to be a citizen, a responsible citizen, you have to know about things that have a scientific basis. Global warming, sustainable energy, viruses, you know, all of these have a scientific connection. So that, I think, is a very important number one. People often forget about it. Second, of course, science and technology is a very good way and leads directly to innovation. There's nowhere to hide in science and technology, to borrow a phrase from Professor Hamilton. You have to deliver the goods. It's not that you can argue a case better, and therefore you do. You know that. And thirdly, science and technology can lead to a huge impact on the economy. Innovation needs to create a product and needs to build business, and so on. And I think, in a way, science and technology, of course, there's a long tradition in Chinese history. In fact, on my desk in my office is a plaque that listed many of the inventions in science and technology. You'll get this as a gift later tonight. You know, starting with the compass and printing and so on. But unfortunately, that list stopped, you know, some time ago. So I always tell my colleagues at HKUST, our job is to continue that list. So I think that's a very important point for science and technology, especially in a place like Hong Kong.
Thank you very much, Professor Chan. I now have a question from the audience for both our distinguished panelists, which is, how can secondary schools prepare their students for a world-class university?
Let me begin, and you know, the answer is very simple: to prepare them to do the best that they possibly can, prepare them to study hard, to write well, to know another language, at least one other language. Although I have seen absolutely no problem there in Hong Kong, where most of your bright young people seem to speak 3 or 4 languages, and enormously impressive. That being said, I think there is also a fundamental thing that separates out the really best and brightest, and I'm sure you have all seen it in your students. I should tell you my link to the world of teaching. My mother and my father were both teachers. My father a secondary school teacher, my mother a nursery school teacher. I married a secondary school teacher, my wife Jenny in the front row. My sister is a teacher. I am completely absorbed and immersed in the world of teaching of children. And I think you all know when you have a student of very special ability, and the one thing that usually separates them is their ability to think in different ways, to think in ways that aren't obvious, that aren't mechanical or automatic, that are actually a new way of looking at something. And you know, we may come and talk about the nature of admission to Oxford in a few moments, but you know, one of the key parts of Oxford admission is an interview. And the interviews for Oxford have gained legendary status. Every year in the British press they report crazy questions that are asked by Oxford dons to their potential applicants. And you know, some of them I can't even repeat here, but one was told to me by someone I actually met in Shanghai, and was an Oxford graduate, and we were talking about the Oxford interview that he had, and he was an engineer. You know, going to study engineering, mechanical engineering. And the Don, who was an engineering Don, asked him a question, and it was, tell me what you think might have been the cause of inflation in 17th century Holland. You know, completely off the wall question. Completely off the wall. The guy had never studied 17th century Holland. The guy had never given any thought to 17th century Holland. But of course that was the point. He was being asked to think about something that he'd never thought about before. He was being asked, well, do you know what inflation is? Do you know what 17th century Holland, what was going on? Tulips. Aha, tulips. And you know, you can imagine the kind of, and there is no right answer. You know, I think we all recognize that at the boundary of knowledge, there is no right answer. And so it is just the originality and the independence of the answer that you provide. And so answering this question, it is, you know, encourage your students to think creatively, to think about things in ways that aren't obvious, because the obvious is available to many. The best and the brightest have the opportunity to do something truly new and different.